Hey,
How are you?
how are you, champ?
I'm doing all right. Thank you so much for your support. That was
Oh,
great.
my pleasure. Gosh, I was so excited and it was so nail biting. Um,
Yeah,
but
especially when the
obviously,
tracker disappeared at the end.
well, it went up a mountain. Did it go up or down? It looked like it went up from the contours. And I
Oh
thought, no, she's gone off course. She's got
God.
lost. She's disorientated. She's hallucinating.
Well, I was doing that, but I didn't go off course. But
Oh,
oh
that's good.
dear. But yeah,
Um,
Dion said to say sorry, he couldn't give you any more, but the service out there was
yeah, I'm
atrocious.
sure.
So
No, I'm sure.
yeah,
Well, congratulations. I mean, wow.
yeah.
um, how was it? I mean, how are you now? And tell us,
Oh,
what are your
wow.
thoughts on it?
It was my mind was blown, like, well and truly. That's, if I'd thought I'd done something tough before, this was just out of this world, just completely. Yeah, it's so hard to even put into words, how hard it was, but also how like empowering and amazing it was as well. It was the first race I've done that I actually felt like there was not one point during the whole race that I wanted to quit or wanted to stop. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that I went into it with no expectations and no goals. Normally you go into a race and you're like, oh, I'd like to do this time, or I'd like to finish in this kind of position. And I just had none of that. I just wanted to finish. That was my only goal.
Yeah.
And I really think that really helped my mental state. Like, I was just so positive the whole time. Even there were low moments, but there was never a time, like, normally I come through a race and I'm like, at some point I've thought that I'm rubbish, that I'm crap, I need to stop, why am I doing out here, this is just stupid. But the whole race I was just like having a great time, but also
Wow.
struggling. But it was just, I don't know, my mind seemed to carry me through. I think at times I was having like an out of body experience.
Well, you're saying in your Instagram post how well Dion had prepared you mentally. I mean, you mentioned taking the pressure off, but really, there's still an awful lot of pressure in simply finishing a 200-mile race,
Yeah.
and those next two surely must also be there in the back of your mind somewhere. So there's pressure that you've got to finish in a way.
Yes. Yeah. And there definitely was. And I guess I was just compartmentalizing. And I think from having Dion talk me through it so much beforehand, I really was focused on just getting to the next checkpoint,
Yeah,
and the whole
yeah,
time thinking about what am I going to do when I get to the next checkpoint, and, not hooking up with people and staying with them for the sake of staying with them, because you make so many friends along the way. It's easy to go and do their pace as well. And
yes,
yeah,
yeah.
it's
And
hard. You have to be selfish.
there were quite big chunks, weren't there, between the checkpoints? What was it
Yeah.
like being out in the middle of the American wilderness,
Yeah.
miles from anywhere? And did you meet any bears?
No, the only animals I saw were a deer and I saw two snakes.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, that wasn't as scary as I
Not too
thought.
life threatening.
No, it was quite funny seeing the deer. I remember it was the first night coming out of cold water lakes, or about 50 miles in, and running along. It was quite an overgrown path, and my head torch hit like the eyes, and I was like, oh, like, it sort of took me by surprise. I
Yeah.
like sort of stopped and I was like, what is that? I was like, oh, that's just like a massive deer. Like, it was a meter in from the trail, but in bushes. And I knew there was another girl behind me, probably, I don't know, a couple of 100 meters, because I just passed her. And like a couple of minutes later, I could hear, ah! It's like, oh, she's just found the deer,
You saw
right?
it. Oh, funny.
So,
Yeah. Because you
yeah,
said that first night would be almost one of your biggest challenges, wouldn't it?
yeah.
Yeah. How did you face that?
I mean, the first night was long. I made a note of where I was, because the first night I had come through Coldwater Lake, so it was like 50 odd miles in, and we had a huge section to do. So it was like 18.7 miles up Norway Pass. and had 5,100 feet of climbing. So it's about 1,500 meters. And it was a tough climb. I mean, the whole course there is really, really brutal. And, you know, like I was climbing up Norway Pass, and, you know, you're kind of hooking up with people, but no one was really talking on that pass as well. Everyone was, I think, head down. We all knew it was going to be a long night, you know, kind of envisaging being out there for sort of 8 hours. And yeah, everyone's climbing up, and, you know, you start to get the sleepies at, you know, 2-3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
You start to feel a little disorientated, and you start to see people having little naps on the side of the trail.
Oh, really? You're still around people then at this stage, presumably, because you're relatively early on in the race, aren't you?
Yeah. So at this stage, pretty much up until that the first night has passed, so into the second morning, so you've been out for 24 hours, and that's when it really started to spread out. So it was kind of nice to have people around you for that first night. And that first night, although it was a huge climb, it wasn't overly overgrown. It was still kind of quite barren and open. So in terms of, I didn't even think about wild animals during that point, because it just felt to me quite safe out in the open. And, you know, you could see people sleeping on the side of the trail. And so, yeah, that felt kind of safe. But yeah, I mean, being up there and God, watching the sun come up for that first morning, that was something else. I mean, I timed it perfectly to be up at Norway Pass. To see that, it was phenomenal. I've got some great photos of it as well. And yeah, I
saw some photos on Facebook on the page. Is that there was a photograph? Is there a famous sort of rope section bit where you're pulling yourself out of a river? Is that where you were?
So that's on day one, and you go through the blast zone of Mount St. Helens. So the volcano erupted there about 20 odd years, or probably more, 40 years ago. And it is so barren, like the whole blast zone, there's nothing lives there anymore.
Really?
So,
still?
Yeah. And it was hot. Like I remember thinking about it, because we had about 13 miles to the first checkpoint, and then you were hitting the blast zone. So you had a whole lot of volcanic rocks to climb through, which was really tricky. I'd made up some good places, and then I'm terrible at this rock hopping. So I lost a few places there, and it got really hot, and we were having another heat wave. And I remember we'd gone through the blast zone. It was super, super hot. And then we were back in like a bit of a shaded forest, and I could hear this guy screaming. Like, I just thought, oh my God, is someone being mauled by a bear or something? And I came around the corner, and this guy was laying on the trail. There was another runner with him trying to help him, but he was cramping so bad. Single track trail, and he was just spread out on the trail, and like his leg, and you could see his calf. It was just like, and there's nothing you can do. Like, you know, gave him salt tablets. We made him drink some more electrolyte, and I didn't have any pickle juice with me. Otherwise I would have given him that, because I know that solves it. But I had nothing, because it was so early on in the race. It was like, well, I just had my basics. I knew, you know, in another 10 miles I'll be at a checkpoint. And yeah, so I kind of stayed with him for 5 minutes, but then luckily other runners start to come up, and then you're like, now we can stay here forever with him, or we can carry on. It was like down the trail. It's like he's with someone now. Because this was only 2 miles out of the first checkpoint. And talking to the guy, he'd only ever run 50K before. It's like, you've run 50K and now you're here doing a 200 mile. That was crazy.
Wow. Okay, yeah, that is a bit crazy.
Yeah, it was so hot going through there. I mean, I ran out of water. They told us to take lots of water. So I probably had 2.5 liters with me for I think it was an 18-mile segment. But you knew you were going to get water at 11 miles. There was a stream. Okay. So I was out of water by then. That's how hot it was. It was like in the high 30 degrees. And
wow, you know, but you managed. I mean, Dion was saying that you had very little problems, a couple of blisters, and otherwise you'd been really comfortable.
Yeah. I had a little vomit on the first night, which I think was heat, because we've gone through that really hot day, and just as the sun was setting, I just started to feel a little queasy, and actually laid down on the side of the trail for about 2 minutes. And then when I got up, I was like, oh, I'm going to vomit now. And I vomited, and then I was fine. But, you know.
That's Bless you.
I only threw up like probably a tablespoon of liquid. It was like, oh,
Right.
I don't know. It's just the acid in your stomach that needed to get out. But
oh, that's good. Better out than in.
Yeah, that's what I said. And actually someone else said to me later, he's like, oh yeah, I saw you having your vomit. And he said, I wish I'd done that. Would have felt much better.
Only ultra runners can say that to each other.
Yeah. But no, I was really, really, I was going to say lucky with my feet, but it's not luck. I really planned how to look after my feet. And it was pretty much every checkpoint. I probably missed one or two, but every checkpoint I took my socks off, I wet wiped them, I let them dry. It takes like a couple of minutes to dry. Then I'd put on Gurney Goo, which is a New Zealand product. It's a really thick foot balm.
Okay.
Dion's always used it, and I've never lubed my feet. It's like, oh, who does that? But after I had some issues in Mohican in June, I thought, I'm going to try this. So try nothing new on race day, but here I was trying this technique, and I had exoskin toe socks on, and amazing. Like my feet, at the end, the medics were like, you've got the best looking feet here. Like how did you do that? And the only reason I got blisters on both of my heels was because I stupidly changed out shoes at probably 80 miles, and I changed into a half size bigger, preempting that my feet would swell. But when I look back, like my feet weren't swelling. Like I could still see my veins and all of that they were all good. And as soon as I changed shoes, next checkpoint, I finally had some service, and I messaged Dion. I'm like, got blisters, I need my other shoes back. But I wasn't going to see him for another 12 hours. So like, oh, so I had to get the medics to deal with that. They had to pierce them, tape them up. But as soon as you start running, you could just feel blisters coming on top of blisters. It's like, oh no.
Oh, that's a shame. Well, it's just a never ending learning curve, isn't it?
It is.
You make a plan for something, and then you don't need it, but you don't think you're not going to need it.
Yeah, I know. But I definitely, the foot care worked. So I'm going to stick to that.
I must say, the picture you put up of your feet was the only foot photo I've been able to see without gagging, so that was fantastic. Well done you. What about going through this second night and the third night? I mean, did you have little power naps, or did you sleep at the checkpoints? How did you manage that?
Yeah, so I had no sleep plan going into it because I had no clue what was going to happen. So actually after the first night, so I did Norway Pass, and then you came down into a checkpoint, and by then it was probably like 7 a.m. I'd hoped to be in there on dark, like still dark, but you can't plan these things. Everything takes longer than you think. And the checkpoints in this race, let me tell you, they are never where you think they're going to be. You're always like, oh, it has to be less than a mile. It's like, no, it's going to be 3 miles from here. Even though you've got your watch, but the GPS is on the low setting. So it's not,
and that's
really
over
accurate.
an hour as well, isn't it?
Oh, easily. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Crazy. But I got into there and I felt a little sleepy. So I thought, right, I'm going to eat something. I changed my clothes and I had a 20-minute nap, which was phenomenal. I cannot believe that at 7 a.m, the sun's shining, I laid in a tent on a mat and I fell asleep in a second. I didn't put earplugs in or anything. And I set my alarm for 20 minutes and then I was out. I was like, okay, I'm going. It was like I was on
ready to
clockwork. Yeah. And
cool.
then the second night, so that was a tough night as well. Again, you're doing a huge climb. We got in at 102.5 miles at Spencer Butte. And I remember sitting there. It wasn't a sleep station, so there was nowhere to sleep. And that was about 2 or 3 a.m. And I was like, well, I've got to push on to the next station to get a sleep. So, but sitting there, they actually told us that, because there was about 5 of us sat there, and they were like, oh, you guys are all in the top 50. And we were all like, what? How is that possible? Like, we can't be in the top 50. And so I think that actually gave me at least a bit of a push to carry on. But the descent to the next sleep station, you think, oh, I'll just get to the next aid station. It's like, oh my God, it's like 7 hours away. It's just and they took you down this horrendous hill. Like it was just, there was no trail, you were just looking for the pink markers, and that's actually when I did think I might see a bear, because there was just, you were just like in trees and bushes, and
Bush, yeah.
you're not following a trail, and it was so steep you couldn't get a run on, and I thought, gosh, if your feet aren't knackered by now, this descent is absolutely killing them. I was like, say goodbye to your toenails. You were just down, down, down. It was horrible. That was probably the worst section for me. I hate downhills as it is, and that was really hard on the quads, really hard on the feet, and I was just so tired. I was just wanted to get to Lewis River. I finally got there, and I took a 2-hour nap. And that was a really cute aid station. They had whiskey station out the front, so you could have shots of whiskey.
Sign me up.
And I was a bit worried to take that. I didn't have any, which is a bit sad. But yeah, I just wanted
I must admit, that's probably not the thing you're really craving, is it?
No. So I got there, and that was probably when I was feeling my worst. I tried to eat, because I thought you should eat before you sleep. It's good to get the body recovering and getting ready to go. But I ordered a breakfast burrito, because the menus there are great: burgers, quesadillas, breakfast burrito, but I just couldn't eat it. So I drank a bit of hot chocolate, and then I went and laid down, and they actually had a family running it, and it was so cute. Like, they said, oh, when you're ready to sleep, you just check in with, I can't remember his name, but let's say it's Tom, and little Tom, he's like 12 years old. He takes you to the tent, and he takes your name and what time you want to wake up, and then
really? Oh, fantastic.
And you go in a tent, and same thing. I think there was like 2 other people in the tent, and as soon as my head laid down, I mean, there's no pillow, you're just on like a little camp mat, and I was out 2 hours. Next thing I knew, little Tom's touching my foot saying, okay, 2 hours, you wanted to wake up. And I'm like, where am I? What's going on in my life?
Why am I here?
Yeah. And it's just amazing that you can get up and your body is still moving. Like, by this point, you must be 130 miles in, and I got up, real stiff to get out of the tent. It's never easy to get out of the tent, but got out of the tent, and got out of the checkpoint, and I was running, I say loosely, but jogging. Did
you manage to eat after that?
Yeah, I did have a quick, I got some hash browns, so ate some hash browns and drunk some more chocolate milk. Chocolate milk's my savior, and then got through. So that was the second night, done and dusted, and the sleep really helped. I caught up to a couple of people on that next section, so it does go to show, if you sleep, you can catch up. So that was really helpful, and that was a tough section. I was then expecting to see Dion at Klickitat, I think. Oh no, he'd seen me at another point. But moving on to like Klickitat, I think is about 140 miles in, or 150. And this was the one checkpoint that Dion had said, I'll definitely be there. This is absolute, I will be there. This is the closest one to where he was staying in town. Because let me tell you, Dion drove the length of Great Britain crewing me. So he drove from the bottom of Great Britain to the top as the crow flies. He drove 600 miles.
Wow.
To crew me running 209, which is, and on crazy roads, like he said, some of them he had to hike in a mile because he just couldn't drive any further.
Wow.
So whilst I was in treacherous terrain, so are the crews. So hats off to him. I think he got only slightly more sleep than I did, but I was really looking forward to seeing him at Klickitat, and so disappointed to get there and there was no Dion. I was like, oh.
Oh no, yeah, because that's, I suppose, if you're on a promise, you're sort of really relying on that, aren't you? That's your little reward. You're going to get there and you see him. And what happened? He'd
had a flat tire. So
so
he'd had a flat tire the night before, had to change it to the emergency spare on the middle of a dirt road in the middle of the dark. And then in the morning he had to go to the tire shop and get all of that sorted. But obviously I didn't know that, and but luckily we had discussed that beforehand, that if you turn up at a checkpoint and he's not there, something might have happened.
It's going to be a very good reason for it.
Sort yourself out. You can't let it affect you. And And that's what I did. I just thought, right. And I was actually planning on having a little sleep there as well. But I just thought, no, I'm going to eat some breakfast, and off I went. So yeah, that was.
So, okay. So we're charging through day 3, heading towards your 3rd night.
Yeah.
How I mean, you're like the Duracell bunny. How are you feeling now? I mean, at that stage.
Yeah, you're actually starting to see things at this point. So I've had two and a bit hours sleep, and you are seeing things. So I remember leaving Chain of Lakes, and I'd actually seen Dion there, and then I was going to see him at Klickitat, which was further on. So I'd caught up to a guy coming into Chain of Lakes and had run with him for the last sort of 3 miles, which was great. And fantastically, he'd said to me, because I was telling him about Dion coming out to checkpoints with Gobi, and he was like, "What's your husband's name?" I'm like, "Oh, Dion." He's like, "I just read his book." I was like, "Oh, wow."
Oh,
so that was pretty cool. And then, we left that checkpoint. He'd left a little bit ahead of me. He was going to have a nap on the trail. So I caught up to him. And at that point, I was feeling like really, really flat. So it was good to hook up with him. And we chatted for hours and hours. And we did the climb of the 3rd night together. And that was just really long. And at one point, because he'd said, I'm going to need to stop for another sleep. And so he peeled off at one point and had a sleep. And I actually ended up peeling off and having my first trail nap on that climb on the 3rd night. I was a bit scared about doing it, just stopping on the side of the trail and having a sleep.
Yeah.
But he talked about doing it. He said he didn't sleep at any of the aid stations, that he just did it on the trail. And after I lost him, then I started to feel flat again. And, everything was like moving like in slow motion. It's almost like things are combining together, and we were climbing a mountain, and I was like, oh, maybe this isn't a good idea. I could actually do an injury here. So I found a flattish section, and I pulled out my emergency bivvy sleeping bag, got in there, set my timer, 20 minutes. Again, as soon as my head hit the ground, I was off, out.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to sleep on a mountainside, And
no, I think needs must. So your body definitely takes over, doesn't it? And how did you feel after that 20 minutes though?
Amazing. It's amazing how much 20 minutes can actually just reignite you and just get you going. And again, a bit disorientated when you wake up, because you forget where you are, and you kind of look up and you're like, stars, pine trees, it's pitch dark. It's like, where am I? Which way am I going? Luckily, I knew I was going up a mountain. So, because some people have said you wake up and you don't know which direction. So if you're on a flat trail, you should actually have a method to maybe point your poles in the direction you're supposed to be going.
That's a very good point, isn't it?
Yeah, because I've heard horror stories of people going back the wrong way. But luckily, I knew I was going uphill. So it was like, okay, keep going uphill.
Yeah.
And actually he caught back up to me at that point, and we saw the sunrise together. So I actually said to him, "Oh, how romantic. We saw the sunset and the sunrise together." But then we lost each other after that one. But that was a really tough climb. And then so that was the 3rd night. So I've had 2 hours 40 sleep over 3 nights. Final day to go. And actually seeing that sunrise, I did say to him, I'm like, this is the last sunrise we're going to see, because God damn it, we are finishing this next night. We're not seeing another sunrise. So that was pretty motivating as well. And I think that's why I didn't end up sleeping at the next aid station, because I just thought, no, Dion's not there, but I'm going. That was the first time I'd probably allowed myself to believe the finish line was in sight. It was probably 30, 35 miles away. And you're like, what's that?
30 miles.
Yeah. But it's weird. You actually, being an ultra runner, I know sometimes people do joke about the distances that, it's just a marathon. But I don't think I'd actually really believed that saying until I was at that point where I was like, oh, it's only 30 miles to go. Like, I can do that. I know I can finish now. That was the first time I'd allowed myself to picture getting to the finish. And yeah, but then it's disappointing because you hit the next section and it's brutal. And you're just like, I just want to run.
Yeah, well, Dion
Oh.
shared a little video
Oh,
of you. It was like you were in the jungle.
it totally was. Those next two sections, someone counted that we had like 209 blowdowns, they call them, so trees that are down.
Yes.
And you are not just stepping over a log. You know, you try and explain to people, you're like, oh yeah, there's trees down. It's like, oh yeah, you just jump over it. It's like, no, you are having to climb a tree, like slide under it, or you're climbing it, you're balancing. It's on the side of a cliff. Like if you fall off, you're going down. Like you might not die, but you're going a long way down.
It looked really tough.
Oh, and your legs aren't functioning as they normally would, you know.
Neither is your brain, presumably.
No. And on one of those sections, it was so heading to Twin Sisters, and this is heading into the second last checkpoint. And this is where you're going through all these blowdowns, and, you know, it's hot, middle of the day again, and the heat just didn't let up. And I got stung by 2 bees going through one of these blowdowns. You could hear the bees, you know, and already that makes you nervous, but you're in this blowdown, and it took me like 2 minutes to get through the blowdown. Like it's just so confusing, and you're climbing, and but then the bees stung me, and oh my God, the adrenaline. Like I went out of there like a bull at a rodeo, and I was suddenly running up a trail. Like I was running up a hill. Now I'm 170 miles in and I'm running up a hill. It's like, and I spoke to someone afterwards, they're like, it's the bee sting. I was like, really? It's like, wow, maybe that's a trick for ultras. Maybe we all need to take bees. But I think I was panicking as well, because I was just like,
I think yes. Get away from the bees.
Yeah. I was like, what if they're all on me? I'm just like, oh my God, run.
Oh my goodness.
That was freaky. I did not enjoy that part of it at all. And the blowdowns were just ridiculous. And even leaving Twin Sisters, you know, you're heading to the last checkpoint, and I remember Dion saying to me, oh yeah, this is a pretty good section, you can run this section. Like, no freaking way. And he'd done it in the daylight, I was doing it in the night.
Okay.
You couldn't find the trail. There were so many trees down, you were going downhill. It was a nightmare. And then when you finally did hit the section that he said was runnable, like there was just all these little like sticks that were sticking out on the path. And, you know, you're trying to run. I was trying to run. I was probably managing 15, 16-minute miles of a jog, but you weren't lifting your feet up at that point. And your mind was playing so many tricks on you, because by now it's probably, I don't know, close to midnight. It's dark. It had started to rain, so it was wet underfoot. And you were just tripping over everything, but you didn't know what if you were seeing was real. Like I was imagining there was people there. I kept seeing people, like they were there. There was a woman standing there in a bikini, and then there was someone else standing there. There were kids cheering me on, and then, you know, you trip over something, and at one point, like something hit my gaiter and just sent me flying. And yeah, you're just like face first in the mud, and it's like, oh my God. But luckily that woke me up anyway.
Oh my goodness. So what time did you actually finish?
So I finished at 3:30 a.m.
Okay.
And I mean, those last 7 miles, so bear in mind, you've just done 202 miles through technical terrain, like overgrown bushes. You've been whacked in the face 100 times. Your legs are shredded, and you finally hit road. So the last 7 miles are on road, not flat. It's just slightly rolling, but you're on road. And Dion did the calculations, and he was like, 7 miles, you need to do 14-minute miles to get sub 90. And, you know, it hadn't had a goal, but at that point you're like, okay, that could be achievable. Let's see what 14-minute miles feels like, you know. And I did the first mile, and I'm like, okay, I can do this. Second mile, but then come the third mile, like it's hard. Like your whole body is screaming at you to stop, and your feet are in so much pain, like just the pressure from the pounding. You know, you've been pounding for 4 days now, and the pain was just so much. And Dion was behind me in the car. He didn't have enough time to kind of park and then come back and run with me. And it was, 1 a.m. or something now. So it was like, there's no one on the road. And it was pretty dangerous for me to be on the road because I was running like a drunk anyway. I was like weaving all across the road.
My goodness.
I didn't know what was going on. All the trees were like animals. And I'm just like pointing at them like, oh, hey, bye. And so it was good that he was behind me because I was just, even my head torch, that the road just looked like this white mess of, like, it didn't even look like a road. I couldn't see the white lines or anything. And
so he was literally behind you, sort of lighting up with the headlights.
Yeah.
Well, that's something, isn't it?
Yeah, and he was coming up beside me, and he was like, I was starting to get angry then. This is probably the only point we were having an argument, and he was like, okay, you're doing great, we've got it, let's try and just go a little bit faster so we can bank a bit of time. And I'm just shouting at him like, I don't want to do this, I don't want to even do it, I don't care about the time, this sucks, let me stop, make it stop. And at the same time I'm like looking at my watch, still focusing on the time.
Yeah.
And he knew that I could do it, but at that point I think I was like petrified to even try. And I didn't want to try and not make it, like to go through that pain and then not make the sub 90. Like, couldn't I just walk it in and just finish in 93 hours, but he just kept pushing me. And at one point I was like, he's like, oh, you got 3 miles to go. And I'm still screaming at him saying how terrible it is and how he's making me do this. That's my choice. And I said, it's longer than 3 miles. So he went and drove to the finish line to check the mileage. And he was like, he told me afterwards, he was really worried to leave me because he thought you're just going to start walking and give up. But while he was gone, I looked down and I remember seeing like a 12-minute mile and an 11-minute mile. And
wow,
even though I was like being so angry towards him, like I just wanted the pain to stop, but something inside me was still saying, no, you can do this, like you can get to the sub 90, like you can do it. And then he came back, he was like, yep, it's there. By that time I had like 2 miles to go. And he then drove to the finish to film me coming in. And oh, what a feeling though to finally see the school, because you finish at a school and you have to do a lap around the track.
Oh no, that would probably finish me off.
But it was amazing. It was because I'd been trying so hard for those 7 miles, like I hadn't even thought of the finish line. I hadn't even grasped that I was about to finish a 200-mile race. And as soon as I hit the track and they started cheering and they had the bells, and they rang the bells the whole time you're on that track. Wow. And it was such an amazing feeling because suddenly I was on my own and all you could hear was the bells. And I was like, you know what, you're going to finish 200 miles. And that's when, you start to get the tears welling up and you're like, oh my God, it's like, oh, I'm going to finish. And
you did it with 7 minutes to spare.
Yeah, that's because I started running faster along
those
the way.
11-minute miles.
It was, yeah. And that's just
amazing.
That just blows my mind to think, I'm not the world's best runner by any stretch. And to think you can, after 202 miles, you can be running, let's call them 13-minute miles. Like that's just phenomenal. How does the body even do that?
I have no idea.
And then you cross the finish line and you go and sit in a chair. I ate some pizza and half an hour later I went to stand up and I could not move. I was like, I couldn't get out of my chair. And it's like your body knew that's it.
That's it. It can stop now.
Yeah, if the race was 300 miles, your body would have been like, no, you're still going. But your body knew that's it. You're done. Like,
I think that's something that people have always said when they first start ultras, and they say, well, I've done a marathon, but I finished a marathon and I couldn't possibly do another 4 miles to make it a 50k or something. But actually, because you've got it in your head, you're doing that distance. You'll do that distance and no more. And then
exactly.
Well, fantastic. So how have you been recovering? And presumably now your thoughts are turning to Tahoe 200.
Yeah, so recovery was, I went to bed probably 5 o'clock that morning and had a few hours sleep, and then I wanted to get up and go through the day so I could go to bed properly that night. Where we were staying had a hot tub, so
Mm,
I had,
wow.
because I had the blisters, I didn't want to get my feet wet. So trying to watch someone get into a hot tub without getting their feet wet after running 200 miles, I should have videoed it. It was very amusing.
That's fantastic. Oh my
Yeah, and
goodness.
I've just been getting lots of sleep, eating really well, and just resting. Just felt really tired, even probably today. I mean, it's a week out now, and I'm going to go for a little run today, maybe go and do 2 or 3 miles. But it's the first time I actually feel alert again. Like I've felt like I was in kind of a fog the last week.
Yeah.
Just even I'd try and answer a few emails, and I'm just like,
I think that lack of sleep has a greater effect on us than we realize, doesn't it?
It does, for sure. And I mean, the first 2 days I struggled to walk, particularly the first morning. Dion had to lift me out of bed because I could not just sit up, I couldn't get my legs to push me out of bed. So he had to like lift me up, and then I was like, oh, don't let me go.
No, no, down.
Yeah. So yeah, it was a tough couple of days. And then, but by the third day, I'm, walking around fine, and yeah, just slow to start. But once you start moving, things ease up. And I've just been doing lots of Epsom salt baths and self massage. And I had a proper massage on Tuesday, and had a pedicure. And the guy doing the pedicure is like, it's been a little while, hasn't it? So, nah.
Wow, I'm just impressed
Yeah.
you've got nails.
I know. I think they will come off. It always takes me a few months for them to
Yes.
work their way. But
Oh yeah, just paint them in the meantime then.
yeah. So yeah, but I feel good, and yeah, feel ready to go. All the cuts have healed up, and
Any
yeah,
lessons that you'll take forward that you think, right, I did that wrong, I'm going to change it for the next one?
not change my shoes.
Not change your shoes.
I've just ordered another pair of the original size, so now I've got two in the right size, because I just planned ahead thinking I'm gonna get bigger as I
Well,
go.
yeah, I'd probably do the same. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll use them up in training, but I'm not changing during a race again, until it becomes absolutely necessary. So
Or
that's,
give yourself the option, maybe. I mean, because they do swell sometimes, and maybe you
yeah,
just didn't on that particular occasion, but
yeah,
they might do
exactly.
still, mightn't they? You just don't know, do you?
Yeah. So I think that was probably the biggest mistake I made. And then, yeah, I think now in my head, I know I can do 200 miles.
Hmm.
So now, you look back and you're like, well, you could have pushed a little bit harder here or there. But now, yeah, ready to give it a bit of a push. Unfortunately, Tahoe has just been cancelled. So they have bushfires there.
Oh no.
Yeah, there's been 400 homes lost,
Oh,
lives lost. It's an absolute disaster. The air quality is through the roof. Like, it's not safe to be running outside. So
oh
I
really?
only just found out yesterday. So I'm like super gutted. And it's
Oh, I'm
really
sorry.
like, it's so
I'm
hard
sorry
to
for
have.
everyone. Yeah.
I know, it's so hard to have those feelings, because obviously the homes and the people's lives and the animals are what matters, but at the same time you're a bit disappointed for yourself.
It's
And I know
natural. Yes, of course it
it's
is. You've been
it's
working to this for so long.
yeah, so we're waiting to see what the options are. I think there's a virtual option, which I may need to do, because I wanted to do the Triple Crown, so I may just need to do 200 miles on my own. Yay.
Oh my
But
goodness.
Dion said he'll run with me and crew me, and we'll figure it out. But yeah, otherwise,
Where is it in relation to where you are now? What's the sort of, how far away is it?
so we're 7-8 hours drive north of Tahoe. So we
Okay.
can't see the smoke at the moment, but I have seen lots of images, and yeah, there's friends I know that are there, and it's like pea soup out there. There's no chance you're
Oh,
running.
wonderful. Yeah.
So if there's a virtual option, otherwise, see what the race organisers say about deferring that race to next year. And then if that's the case, I may just say, right, let's just get back to training and then hit Moab and
Yeah.
really go and give it a push, because Moab's a lot more runnable. It's like 20,000 feet less of climbing. So, you know, it's 240 miles, but
yeah, that's, you know,
yeah.
I mean, that's another day in itself, isn't it?
Well, actually, a lot of people finish about the same time as Bigfoot because you've got a
Okay.
lot less climbing.
Right.
So, yeah, would love
And
to
will
go
you
to
stay where
there.
you are then? If say you chose to do the virtual version, would you stay where you are for now?
Well, no, because we're so transient. Our booking is in Tahoe. Like I've got nowhere to stay here. Got nowhere to stay anywhere else. So we have to go, which is really unfortunate because it's going to be pretty rubbish down there as well. But yeah, there's no way you can get out of your bookings. Everyone has the no cancellation policies. So yeah, off to the smoke Tahoe we go.
Oh, well, that's
yeah.
not good. Well,
No.
certainly if you're going to be thinking about doing a virtual.
Yeah, and it may be that we have to cross over and drive an hour or two away to do the virtual. We'll just have to wait and see. I mean, the fire's starting to get contained. It was 0% contained 2 days ago, and now it's at 11%. So we're, you know, it's improving, but yeah, it's just
awful.
really gutting. So
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know. I was so excited to go and see what I could do as well, you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, disappointing for everyone.
Moab it is. Be going there and really giving that a push.
And when is Moab?
8th of October.
Okay.
Yeah. So we shall see whether I do a virtual or not in the middle, but yeah, we'll see.
Well, let us know.
Yeah.
Please let us know, and we'll you know, we'll be behind you if you do.
Yeah.
And, yeah, well, good luck.
Thanks.
I can't imagine what it would be like doing a virtual 200.
I know. It's definitely not my preferred style of racing.
No, I mean, you've got to have some real,
that could be tougher than Bigfoot altogether.
Yes.
Because the lift you get from even the volunteers at the checkpoints, they're so amazing at these races. You know, they're looking after your feet, they're, you know, getting you food, they're doing everything for you. If you do it virtually, you're on your own. Yeah,
which is quite a big thing actually, when you're, you know, it allows you to focus on doing the race. And of course Dion can't do all of that for you all the time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, keep us posted. Thank you very much for talking to me.
Thank you, and thanks again for your support. That was amazing to see afterwards, and see all the posts, and